Call the meeting to order for the agenda, Oromocto Council and Committee meeting Tuesday, the 14th of April, 2026 at 5:35 p.m. at the Oromocto Municipal Building. I'll call for a mover for approval of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Mawini, seconder, Councilor Kirkbride. Questions? All in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. We've got a little presentation to make to my good friend Joe Longafee from the PAC committee about for 12 years. So I want to give, are you gonna take the picture?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
Joe was in the 6th squadron when my brother died before my brother passed away, and they were good buddies, so we became good buddies, so.
Same hometown.
Yeah, we're both from Cape Breton.
Okay, great, that explains a lot.
Right.
I should have saw that there.
Thank you.
Brother, you go to water for Cape Breton, see, that was special.
Oh,
Thank you, Joe. Anytime, lots of service, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Put the name back in.
You.
So I said, where you going?
Yeah.
Yeah, put it on the bottom over.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking it.
Great guy. All right, we'll move down to number 3, presentations. We have the recreation service agreement proposal. And CEO, you have that?
I do,
Yeah.
we're sure, yeah.
All right.
Sure, things. Okay, so. Just want to run through this for council and the bulk of this is really just for council's awareness. Most of what we want to do through this initiative. Isn't necessarily a direct effect on this council or the decisions, but it has an effect on, obviously, on our constituents, as some people would know if they had a run through in their package, but essentially the highlights that we're really looking for here is we have to try to find a better way to maneuver through this era of rebuilding and offering new facilities and run facilities for those folk who don't necessarily pay taxes towards those facilities directly. So we do have some form of that now in terms of recreational service agreements, but they don't necessarily cover the true costs. And so we're trying to develop a bit of a roadmap for the region to see a way forward through that where everybody's paying their fair share, if you will, based on true costs. So again, current service agreements, they're not affordable or sustainable for our folks and the Oromocto taxpayers. They truly are administrative hassle to our admin staff. They're administratively burdensome on the minor associations who are trying to determine who lives where. It can be hard on our volunteer base because nobody wants to be a volunteer and get into an argument on where you live based on, the fact that you need to pay more. And of course, there's that prevailing thought that this idea of, well, if you want to use it, you pay for it, which, yes, it's a rudimentary way to think of it, but it really is cost prohibitive for most folks who may not live within the boundaries of where some of these assets are. So, in terms of a solution, we kind of tried to look at partnering with neighboring communities to provide those non-residents with access to facilities. We do have some current service agreements in place. Usually ours are kind of year to year, but we've agreed that we would not. We're gonna try to work through this new formula with the region over the course of 2026, and with the hopes that once our current agreements expire in 27, we could move into a new way of doing things. Right now, other communities determine, how the residents access all those facilities. Some have chosen, some haven't. The ones who haven't pay that user fee, if you will. Typically ours, the ones who have signed a service agreement, they're paying the same user fee, but their community's chosen to pay that fee on their behalf. There are some models like the ones in Fredericton where it's just a straight mill rate or percent on the tax base, and that's another model. It still doesn't work, but it's a model for people to pay in. So what does that mean? I mean, it definitely right now, those folks are paying far less to access the same facilities as your constituents for exactly the same program. I think that needs to change, and so do my counterparts in Fredericton. We think the easiest way, much like taxes as a principle, is, create a region-wide approach. Because again, the more people that can pay into and have access to, the less per person usually that means for an individual. So this idea that you can select what you want to pay for and what you don't is cumbersome, and in the end it's cost prohibitive generally on most people. We believe, we being the city of Fredericton, and I know with myself and what we're bringing to you folks for awareness is that the Regional Service Commission's well positioned to help in this matter. I mean, they're created to try to be the glue that connects all of our communities within our region together on an issue and try to talk through that issue. And so we think this is a perfect issue for them to bring to their table and see if we can't find a common solution for the region. Because ultimately, where we'd like to see in the future would be within our capital region. No matter where you live, if you want to play wherever, if you're allowed, then you just go and you play. There's no extra fees. There's no where you live. There's just you sign up, register for that particular program, pay that program registration, and away you go. We think that should help a lot of people and diffuse some of the issues that we currently have with other communities about, how much and whatever, all these other things where it can just be sign up and play. A little bit of background on regional service agreements for Oromocto. They were established in 2014. In Fredericton, they were a little earlier, around 2008. Again, they provide other communities access to our facilities in return for either a tax rate contribution or a cost per head of participant. We have agreements in Sunbury, York South, and portions of the rural district right now. But there's other people within our region that we don't have straight agreements with that pay those out of town fees. And if they don't, they pay that out of town fee, which will be coming this year. It's $399, around up to $400 for winter. So your ice programs, and it's $38 for field type sports, baseball, soccer, that sort of thing. This is hard to see, but we put all of the statistical data on registration from both Fredericton and Oromocto minor programs into GIS. And so we do have an ability to draw in and draw out. We can bring that in future discussions as this evolves, but. You know, all those dots effectively represent at least a person or more than one person who participates in a recreational activity either in Fredericton or Oromocto. Of that, Oromocto is that heavy blue line. So you can see there's a significant amount of dots that fall outside that blue line. And if we were to you know, kind of scan inward, you start to see where they come from. Obviously, it's no secret a lot of our folks from Burton, Geary, Rushigorish, Wasis areas are heavy users of our facilities, but it makes sense, they're right next door. However, they don't pay the true bill and the cost that it takes to operate and maintain some of these facilities. Again, this is for ice. Interestingly enough, there appears to be more field sport users that fall far outside than there is ice users, but it's usually because anybody who's ever dealt with, say, a group like Hockey New Brunswick knows that they're pretty rigid on where you play in terms of you have to sign releases to play in other areas, and that comes as far as you know, those folks that live in Oromocto, if they wanted to play hockey in Fredericton, they actually have to get a release from Hockey New Brunswick to do so. So some of that is controlled through some of those things like that. What are the challenges with the status quo? As we know, well, the current agreements just truly don't reflect operational maintenance costs. I mean, our residents are substantially subsidizing those who don't live within Oromocto. You know, I don't believe for our folks that that's sustainable or affordable, and we hear it, and you're responsible for those who keep saying, why are my taxes going up? It's costing more, it's life in general is expensive, and we hear that too. So it's something we want to try to deal with. Yeah, the other part is local governance reform was in some respects supposed to fix that, in terms of the creation of communities and get away from some of these LSDs where, you know, they weren't necessarily paying true costs because some of it's subsidized through the province for certain things. So, you know, but just hasn't evolved there yet with some of the groups and some of the neighboring communities. But, you know, I think it needs to sooner than later. Again, validating residency is just, it's a real hassle. It really is. If you want to hear about the hassles, you can certainly talk to Jackie and her staff, and they'll sit you down for at least a couple hours and tell you. It is. It's, you know, I mean, we've all heard those stories about, you know, little Johnny's going to live at grandma's house, you know, magically, but not really, just to save that, you know, $399. And then you're trying to determine whether that's a lie, or how you determine how you catch this person in order to pay the true cost, or that extra cost. It's just too difficult. Obviously, a region-wide agreement would be a little more efficient to administer if everybody's sort of playing by the same rules. It's easier to help enforce, because then Fredericton rules are different from our rules, which would be different from Nakawik or Minto or Chipman, and it just gets really convoluted. So, and again, some of the challenge are some councils right now just don't want to participate because they just think, no, I don't want our taxes to go up. That's fine. People want to play hockey, they get paid. That's frustrating because they're not seeing that big picture of, you know, supporting community through, you know, recreational activities. But we understand that right now they have that ability to say no, but you know, it's one of those things that it's, even if they do sign into some of our current agreements, they're still paying less than our folks here in town. So we're trying to propose an access for everyone solution again. Why? This is the slide I hope that resonates with you folks in this room. Our non-residents comprise 51% of our total participants in field and ice sports, but they only pay for 8.1%. Who pays for the rest of that 43%? You do. You pay that extra. So if they were paying what we think is their fair share and close that gap, that could be an automatic reduction of 2.9 cents on everybody's mill rate. That's pretty significant, right? That is what all our good folks in the town of Oromocto are paying to allow all those folks who don't live in town to play on the same team in the same sport. Without a new agreement right now, the actual fair costs pay to play would be $1,271 per person in winter and $153 in summer, instead of $438. So that's the gap we're at. The gap total is about almost $500,000 operationally a year that your citizens are subsidizing those who don't live. So there's an opportunity here to identify a shared cost concept amongst the region to try to make it more affordable for everyone. And that's why we want to bring it to the Capital Region Service to their attention and see if we can get broader region. Why explore it just to share that cost burden? You know, we got to replace things now. You know, we're talking $90 million. Those are all real costs. Then we got to operate it, and we can't keep going down that road of subsidizing other people to the tune that we are, and expect that your citizens bear the gap of that subsidy. I don't feel. We do think that the region has a mandate to enhance regional collaboration service delivery. So this sounds like it should be an opportunity right up their wheelhouse, you know, and we hope that they want to take that on. What could it look like? Well, we think it can establish adequate levels of revenue affordable for everyone. It'd be really efficient to administer because now we're not trying to prove where everybody lives. You remove that idea of quote outside user fees, which is prohibitively, you know, kind of not very inclusive if you're calling somebody outside. You know, bring everybody into one agreement, get everything scheduled. It's easier to program that way. And obviously we know that new facilities would require some separate consideration. Those are the details we work on with the Regional Service Commission if we can get this to evolve further. So we would consider in that the population, tax base, and participation rates. Those are the three criteria to try to make sure it's fair. We understand that some communities are just small, and so, you know, it has to be weighted with what their tax base and population is in terms of how much they have an ability to bear, and so that's all part of the formula. We have the formula. I'm not going to get into the formula right now, but I certainly don't mind coming back in the future and if we can get this to move forward and talk a little bit more about what that formula looks like. What I can say is that formula doesn't affect anybody in the town of Oromocto in terms of our taxpayers pay their taxes and they're eligible to go to any of our facilities. The benefit could be in this is that they can also then go down the road to Brotherton's facilities and not have to pay a quote out of town fee as well, which I think is also a benefit to our citizens if that can happen. So in summary, really, what we're really looking to do is we recognize program recreational facilities. It's important to everyone in the region. We also recognize that not everyone can build these facilities. So now we just want to get that recognition back in the form of at least trying to pay their fair share when it comes to, you know, building and operating, maintaining the facilities. We think that the Capital Region Service Commission is primed to be able to take this on. They should be. We're paying them to do just that, in my mind. So we think that's a good place to start and get them engaged. We think that a cost sharing model can achieve affordability for our taxpayers and let everyone participate. It's really gonna be the decision of councils and regional communities in terms of new agreements and what's sustainable. We're hoping they'll see it that way, because my only other lever is to charge everybody $1,271. Do I really want to do that as a person? I don't believe in that. But as somebody who manages your money, I will do it, because why should I burden our tax paying citizens when it's not their burden to care? But I don't love that idea, and that's why we want to find a new way forward. So in the end, we're just looking to get some direction on presenting these options in more detail to CRSC, and definitely keep everybody informed of ongoing decisions and anything that might come as a result. So really what I'm looking for here, and a big part of this is just so our mayor is a director on a board, at least if we have a blessing that I can go ahead myself, the CEO from Fredericton, start having discussions with the regional service. So when it lands on their table, our director can clearly say that he has the direction from his council to move this forward through myself. That's really why we wanted to put it out there and give the premise today. Or, you know, you might want to provide other direction. However, that's it for tonight. I'm hoping everybody understands the concept and is willing for us to take this to the next step.
Comments or questions, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. I am certainly in support. I think that we can always benefit from exploring options. Until you explore options, you don't actually know what is in the best interest of everyone in your community. I like the equity lens. I'm just gonna provide another spin, or another angle on this, because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who has kids in hockey. And I actually didn't know this until they said this to me, is they said that there are certain age groups of hockey in which there are too many kids for that group or level. And so therefore they actually have to travel to outside communities in order to gain that access. And they said because of that, they then have to incur a fee. And I thought, well, a fee, but not only a fee, but then the additional travel to have to go to that community. So they were just talking about the fact of availability of ice time, and availability of having access to that particular service or recreation for their children in their community. So it's not just people who are outside the community, it's people who actually live inside the community as well, who have to travel to another who has to use the fee. So I just think this overall conversation isn't a bad one to have. And if the whole goal is to simply explore to see if there are more equitable options, then to me, we should always be exploring other options to make things accessible for all.
Council Bowman?
Worship. A couple of things. This is not a new issue. When my son joined the Timbits in early 90s, there was 3 fees in Oromocto. 1 fee if you live in town, 1 fee if you went to District 17 schools, and the 3rd fee if you went to District 18 schools. So this is not new, and there was a survey done at that time too, and I think it was. The numbers were 55% of people came from outside, the players came from outside, but 78% of the coaches came from outside. So there was talk about, you have to pay more, and people said, well, we'll just go somewhere else, and you won't have a program. So it's not always a bad thing to have people from outside in your program, sometimes we need for numbers, but that's not what, the biggest thing is. This is a great concept, but isn't this the same body that said our new building was not a regional infrastructure building? And isn't the same group that said you're all gonna pay for the pool, now we're not paying for the pool? So if you can get this deal, kudos to you, because we just argued against this, that's a deal, we're paying for the rink, or for the pool. So if there's something that's changed and you can get this, by all means, I'm all in favor of it, I just wonder what has changed, do you think you can get this, or that so far that group has not done what they should have done, in my opinion, and like in your opinion, they did not do what they were supposed to do, so go for it, Godspeed to you, hope you do.
Councilor Murdoch?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they, and I actually was thinking the same thing. And only because we didn't wanna play ball, but we didn't wanna play ball because we felt, well, one, we're paying X amount of dollars for the people we have for something, we weren't sure if they were gonna get something out of it. Well, this to me would be a great opportunity for them to say, this is what this organization is beneficial, because here's an angle. With this particular group that we're part of, that we pay X amount of dollars to, that might be able to contribute to us in a way that makes it, and to be honest with you, would be the benefit of everybody that got the service, it's not just us. And so if I got this straight, so right now we pay X amount of dollars into this program, the Service Act, the Regional Service Act, service. And so moving forward, what you'd want them to do is hypothetically collect money from all of us at the same amount-ish. Depending on where you live, like, and like us, I get the idea that some will pay less than taxes, because we do, we pay a certain amount because of our size and our people. And then after when that money's collected, they're gonna contribute to the places that have the facilities? Like, how does somebody come back to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's in effect, yes, I mean, they could.
Cause we keep giving money, I'm just wondering, where is it, how does it come back? Yeah.
The money we pay them is to administer regional things, right?
Right.
So that would change, but what we could see in this concept would be that they can collect the funds from the region. And we already know what we need
Costs
to,
are,
what
yeah.
our costs are, as long as they collectively collect the costs and then they cut us the check for what our
So
costs are.
basically give us back our costs.
That's right.
And when you say to contribute, because we're already contributed already assets money that we have in this, when this organization started as a Oromoctonians.
Right.
When you talk about this outside fee, it would come from the people that actually aren't contributing, but that will technically come back to us because of the services that we're sharing,
Yeah, so
the cost of the service.
right now, for example, our regional service agreements bring in probably an annual revenue of, we'll say about 90,000.
Okay.
If they were paying their true share costs, they should be about 600,000.
Right,
So we have a gap of, 510,000 a year, in which we would make sure that whatever
They
how they
collected.
work, they collect,
Comes
and they're
towards
gonna
it.
pay us $600,000 to continue to manage and operate our facilities for.
and and back to council's point about, we've obviously been battling a little bit with regional about where money goes in the pool, and I get all that stuff. But at the same time, we've also been on this table, been in the committee meetings, been part of the process, paid out a number. Now we're looking at a way to see if the whole idea of this concept should benefit us as in a different way, a different angle. And I don't know, it may not be too hard to reach, like, we might not have burned any bridges here, because to a certain extent, we still play ball. We still did everything they want us to do. We still pay the number, we still sit in the committee, we still participate. It's not like we,
To Councillor Von Richter's point, the sell isn't easy. Nobody likes to pay more. The difference we hope this time is one that they've learned from how their past experience and how they deliver, a proposal to the region. And the other one is this this won't be as financially burdensome as the pool concept was to every individual region, right? Because what you're doing then is you're not asking just Geary and Russia, Gornish and Wasis to pay that 600,000, but you're asking the region.
Pay for everything
Right.
they use, not just a item, but they, if they themselves, I don't.
So it's spread out amongst more users, if you will, so that helps lessen that individual community cost if everybody is on board.
Right.
The fewer communities want to be on board, then obviously the more expensive it gets per community, because I still want to get my 600,000. Am I getting it from 20,000 people or 100,000?
And my only concern is that we forever have heard the debate of why we're paying for something we're not using. I think that this sale's gonna be hard for everyone to jump on board paying something. They're all on, the nice thing is they're not talking about a pool, and they specifically say, I don't use the pool, I'm not gonna use the pool. But everyone in a perfect world will get the concept of fields and ice and parks and, some of the, we'll hope, but I think the hard sell is the other communities having to pay more for something. They don't realize that they use and don't pay for, and that's been our issue from the get-go. And that I think will be the hard one, that you say, why would I have to contribute for something I don't use, or I'm already using it, why do I have to pay more?
No, it's not an easy road, but it's a road we need
I think it's good.
to venture down, because, unless everyone here says, oh, don't worry, just we'll pay for everyone else.
No, I love to get rid of
That's-
the use of fee concept, I love the idea of not paying that by ourselves.
Right.
I think it's great, explore away.
Councilor Carr?
Thank you, Worship. I agree, explore, I think that's always a good idea, is keep your options open. So my questions are. I guess the first. So we're talking, everybody pays that one rate, or maybe it's not one rate, but it's scaled however, right? And then all that money's put into a pot, we'll say. We get, I know you said the number 600,000, so we get 600,000, what does Stanley get? What does Minto get? Because they must be getting something back out of the pot too, because they're having to run a rate as well.
Yeah.
So. If you're in, well, I was looking at the map, if you're in McCabe, you're not coming to our market or rare, you went at one person, right? So what is their rate getting back? What is Stanley's rate? What is Doe County's rate? Because those communities, we're not being a good neighbor, losing all the money out of the community, they're running a minor hockey program, and they have 2 kids that come here to play hockey once in a while. So, what does that model look like for those communities? So are they getting money back, or are they just paying more for a rink that they already have a rink to run and they're barely keeping it alive, but it's the core of their community? So how does that work in your mind for that? I know it's all the details of the national, but.
It's all in the model, right? But let's say Stanley might need $72,000 a year off. Fine. We'll make sure that gets added into the total. Fredericton needs about 2.2 million. So at the end, the whole region, there's a final bill annually of $4 million, but it's spread amongst everyone within the region.
Everybody draws from the pot.
As
Everybody,
per what they,
So when an upgrade needs to be done, honestly, so our ice plant comes to its end, or Stanley's ice plant comes to an end. Does that money, what they need extra money, does that come from this pot too, or are they send it, find the money out? Like, I'm just kind of trying to work through how this works. In the sense that I grew up in one of these outside communities, and if you don't use it, I get it, everybody pays for regional facilities, I understand that, and I agree, I think we're carrying extra load, but you also have to be a good neighbor. And I don't mean paying for everybody else to, like, currently we're being way too nice to the neighbor. I think we're being too good next to the neighbor. But at the same time, like you mentioned, or somebody around the table mentioned, I think Sheridan mentioned that, sometimes there's too many kids to play in the U11, so they have to go somewhere else. It's perfect for those kids. But you don't want to kill the community's programs elsewhere because everybody wants to go to whatever, right? So I'm just kind of curious on that. The other thing I noticed on one of your slides said, what would this look like? It says apply to existing facilities only. New facilities will require some kind of separate consideration. Right. Can you clarify that? I don't. Well, maybe I was writing notes when you did that.
yeah, no, I mean, so right now, we know what our costs are based on our existing facilities.
Okay.
But like
It's a cost, not, it would be
Current
considered a separate.
service agreements always have a read on it, so that it allows you an opportunity to renegotiate when you build something new, because when you build something new, your costs are gonna go.
It didn't mean something separate from the agreement, like, no, it's a pool, it has a separate fee, or it's a new ring, so it has a separate, okay, perfect, that's what I was wondering. Hey, thank you.
Councillor Dawn?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not being a sports person, but along the line of Councillor Carr's thought, I'm looking at that map, I'm looking at the regional service. And I'm picking out the ones in my head that when I sit on committees, the kind of questions they ask. And I'm thinking, is it, it's not just for Fredericton or Oromocto area that you're going after, it's for the whole RSC to take on this portion for every existing recreational that's within our region.
Right.
And administer it to
Which
the
is
municipalities and the RSPs.
14 municipalities in our region.
Okay, I understand, okay. I could just hear few communities.
It's not an easy sell to, especially to those who are used to that, you know, LSD model. Like, we get it. We know we're in for a challenge to try to sell that to people. And it makes sense. You know, if I went to the store and there were 2 boxes of cereal, and this one's 5 and this one's 10, which one are you gonna buy? Same.
Depends the variety in the box.
Right, I mean, it's human nature, but, yeah, that's where we feel like it, I owe that to all your tax paying citizens to at least try. See if we can to, re-less.
Start the talk.
Closer
Yeah.
to getting back to, you know, that equal.
So. Just because of where I've sat for the last few years. You have 2027. I can't see how that's gonna be resolved in a year. So we're being small, but I can see that won't be resolved in a year. But I did read the Daily Gleaner as well while I was waiting in an office today, and I laughed. So the plan is to still go with the increase that we've been doing, or might we have to increase it somewhat for the 27, 28?
So obviously, we have current year for this year increases, I think, which we will do. You know, when we get to 2027, if we don't have an agreement, we'll be back here to talk about whether you want us to go to the full increase of 1271 or continue to subsidize people, because that will be your leverage.
Yeah.
That this council has, and they own that leverage. I mean, they can charge people the true cost. But that'll be discussion for down the road, and hopefully we won't have to go there because everybody will love this idea and buy into it. Who knows, but we'll have to have that discussion then.
So-
Rick, to start it.
Council, we have option 1, the town council adopt the following resolution directing its staff to present a new regional agreement options to the Capital Service Commission. Or option 2, the town council may wish to provide another direction of staff. So I think we should give it a kick at a cat at the Regional Service Commission for one thing and throw it out there. So
Yep.
are we all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Perfect. There it is.
Great, perfect, will do. Thank you.
You got till next Friday to get it figured out.
Do my best.
I just wanna know what size Stephen his battle armor is.
Do I get overtime?
All right,
As per the current agreement, yeah.
Yeah.
we move now to the department with the reports. We'll start with the Finance Committee, in the Department of Finance. Any questions or comments, council? None? Okay. That's a big one. Now we'll move to the Department of Engineering and Public Works. Any questions or comments? We got Dave right here. I have a question. Are they gonna do the spring pickups, like for grass and stuff?
Yes.
When can people start putting it out? I know in our little cul-de-sac, we have the circle And people are starting to put things out there now, and I was just wondering,
I have to get back to you. I know we've been talking about the dates.
Right.
Actually.
okay, so you'll get back to.
Yeah.
Perfect. Council Kirkbride?
Your worship, just a quick question as well, not just about spring cleanup for people's residents, but also about. Do we send out crews to like pick up, we just been blowing through winter and that kind of thing? I drove down through Demores the other day and it's not great. So there's some garbage from the business, you know what I mean, like from the fast food restaurants that they're kind of blowing down. Home hardware.
We did with staff, and I think also typically something there, some of the early stuff.
That's what I figured.
Grass grows and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Council Carr?
Hey, your worship, our area had a meeting with our MLA last week, and one issue that was raised was some ongoing frustrations, and I don't know the dates, but some ongoing frustrations when residents in Lincoln are calling about the state of the roads. And again, maybe this was from a while ago, but frustrations with being told, well, that's not our problem, call DTI. And I'd just like to know or ask if a resident of Lincoln calls inquiring about road conditions, if our town employees could not. It seemed like they were being pushed off to the resident and told to call, if we could take that name and number and advocate for those folks, maybe calling on their behalf to DTI, because they're finding it very difficult to get a hold of DTI themselves. And feeling like they're kind of being brushed off like it's not a town problem, but there's still that misunderstanding of who owns the roads, but they know they see our name at the top of their tax bill, so there's a little bit of confusion related to that, so just maybe, and I'm sure a lot of staff are doing great, this could have been from a while ago, but it's just something that came up.
We will take note of that. Oh, okay, perfect. Spring cleanup, wards 1, 2, and 3 are May 4th to May 8th, and Ward 4 is May 11th to May 15th. Perfect. All right. Any other questions or comments? Oh, okay. We'll move down to the Planning and Compliance Department. Any questions or comments? None? All right. Move to the Oromocto Fire Department. Questions or comments, concerns? None? Department of Recreation and Tourism, Jackie's here, so we can get some answers. Any questions or comments?
Oh, I have.
Oh, Councillor,
Thank you, your worship. About the voyant, we used to, someone else brought it up to me, another resident, because. And they shouldn't have to, but we used to, with the voyant, used to get a reminder. Every 2 weeks of when recycling was happening, and not getting any more, is there a reason for that?
That would be more a question for clerk's office.
I think initially, your worship, initially when we started the curbside programming, we had put in reminders for a year, roughly around there. That's my understanding, but certainly if it's something that you think is helpful, I know I get a reminder every week from the city of Fredericton when theirs is, just because I subscribe to their voice. We can,
Like, that's, I'll say a senior resident project.
yeah, no, it's not a big deal. We
Not a
can,
cost or anything, right?
there's no cost to it. We can just reinstitute it, make sure we have the correct leaks and send it out to, okay.
Thank you.
Good idea.
yeah.
I just look out my front window to see if they've got it against the street.
Senior resident.
He's on the end.
All right, is anything else for the Recreation Department? None? Okay. The clerk's office. Any questions or comments? None? All right. Corporate Services, any questions or comments? None? All right, Human Resources. Oh, Councilor Kirkbride?
Thank you, worship. I just have a question in regards to, it seems that compared to, and if we're talking about our service regional commission, all that stuff, and I'll use Fredericton, for example. Our summer jobs come out so late compared to other communities for kids to apply. and that sort of thing. I can go back 6 years ago, I'll use my oldest son, for example. He already had his job, interviewed, hired before Oromocto even posted. And it's happening, then I'll use my youngest son right now. He's had 2 different job interviews, I think, so far, and the job. It's been taking longer. I just find, I'm not saying that we're not getting good kids, I'm not saying that at all. But
Real key ones.
so the real keen ones are, I'll say, they've already applied. And no offense to the city of Fredericton, would I rather have my son work for the town of Oromocto instead of the city of Fredericton? Absolutely. I would. But he will make that decision at that time, and so I'm just wondering if perhaps for next year, we could maybe. You know, we communicate with Fredericton a lot. When are you guys putting out your summer jobs? Can we make ourselves competitive, make our students competitive for our jobs, and not having to go to Fredericton?
Good suggestion. You take note of that? Council Dodd?
Thank you, I just woke up. I was counting the number of students. Are these all on the seed program?
No, your worship, they won't all be on the seed program. I mean, seed gives you only so many and depends on jobs. Some of them are job specific, but they're all budgeted for, but they're not all.
So there really isn't any reason why we couldn't post earlier then. I can see if it was a seed program and you don't know how many you're getting till you get that, but if it's ones through different departments that just typically or hire students for their department, like in public works and that, why we couldn't post earlier if that's the case, because especially the university kids, they're not waiting around to get those jobs in town when they can get them in Fredericton. They're all out at the same time. We know we're gonna be hiring 3 in that department typically, isn't it? I'm just looking at the list, that's why. Like two for engineering and the parks and water and all of that. We typically have those every year, but I can't see why we can't post them earlier.
No, definitely a takeaway we'll take back to staff and see if they can't get them out earlier.
Council Kirkbride?
Oh, so it is. I was just gonna ask a question. I don't know, what's a BM?
Building maintenance.
Saints.
Yeah.
There's no BM. I didn't know BM.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to administration. We'll start with the trail barriers discussion, and Jackie Dunn has that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight, I just like to talk a little bit about our and some of the, I guess, issues or discussions that we've had in the past couple of years with residents and some of our stakeholders as well. So I'm sure council is just aware as staff that we've had different calls from different residents in regards to our trails. And we do currently have some, either originally they were barriers or fences that were easily torn down by different kind of users. And then we put out some jersey barriers with concrete medians as well. But what I'm hoping tonight is that we can have discussion on some of the different things that we should consider in just determining whether or not what we're currently doing is effective and their feasibility along our trail system. So based on complaints that council would have received many, many years ago, because I'm not even sure when the original gates went up. That council received some complaints about ATVs and motorcycles on the Lincoln Trail within Oromocto. At the time, Lincoln wasn't part of Oromocto, so it was pretty much. But I will say that the Lincoln Trail is basically from according to Trans Canada Trails. It's from Sir Douglas Hazen Park all the way up right through until you get to the Billthorpe walking bridge. So that's all considered the Lincoln Trail. So just so that there's no confusion when I refer to that, it's not just the trail the Lincoln boundaries of Oromocto, it is that entire trail system. So at the time, because of the complaints that council received, there was decision to put up the gates along the trails in Oromocto proper. The Oromocto proper part of the Lincoln Trail. And there was 5 gates put up at that point. Can we quantify the number of complaints that we received over the years? I can't, I don't know if council keeps record of what they received of them. In the few years that I've been in my position, I've only really heard from one individual who complains about. And I'm well aware that there's more, but I don't really know what comes into council and how many there are, so. So those are our 5 barriers that there's 5 in Oromocto, you can see up to the overpass essentially, and then 2 more that we have out of 655 that blocks access to the trails. They are open during the winter months, for example, in Oromocto, so that we can plow. And then they've been put up recently again. And then the ones out in Lincoln are not back up yet because of the agreement that the federations have made with the province, who currently they actually own the entire trail. We have a license of occupancy to use what's in Oromocto and control it. We have yet to receive that in the Lincoln area. So as we know, the gates can be opened with enough force. So you see the one on the right-hand picture, on the right-hand side, the Jersey barrier that's perpendicular was actually blocking the trail, and somebody who with a truck or really strong muscles moved that out of the way on us. And then they also will find ways to get around. So you see in the bottom picture, we then put a whole bunch of those Jersey barriers across so they can get on the trail part, and they just cut through on the left-hand side. So we're finding that no matter what we do, they're finding a way around those. And I know with conversations that I have with counselors, a lot of times now they're just taken to the streets as well, which has just created a new problem that we have created with these barriers. So as the original intent for prohibiting the motorized vehicles caused an inverse effect. So with COVID, the stats show that trail activity, recreation activity in general has had a huge increase. And so in the last few years, like I said, I've received a continued complaint from one individual that we need the barriers up, but I've received multiple saying that we need to bring those barriers down for various reasons. And I believe I've actually had to I've had to deal with a few, and I've forwarded them to counselors in their areas to discuss those. So, for example, accessibility becomes a huge issue. These barriers make it very, very difficult for anyone in a wheelchair or a walker to use that trail system. The way that they are set up, you can still get through them the way we have them set, but if they try to move them, they get too close together, and it's very difficult to do that. Strollers and cyclists, especially when you have a baby trailer in the back, can't get through those gates or the Jersey barriers themselves. There's a group that we had about 4 cyclists last year that came through, who came from Fredericton through Lincoln into Oromocto, and they had a big event planned down the green, and they had to basically disembark 5 or 6 times to get through all those Jersey barriers. So it is cumbersome for them, and it disrupts their flow, and it decreases our trail usage and creates negative experiences. But really we want to increase our trail usage, which helps with the crime prevention as well. So you can see on the right hand side, that picture, it's not very inviting if you're going down there. And we've had some people think that they actually can't go past. They think they have to stop, when we really want them to keep on going through and coming to Oromocto. So what are we doing to alternatively reduce ATVs? We are currently in discussion with the city of Fredericton to create a partnership to standardize the trail system from Fredericton to Oromocto. And with that, we are looking at doing some improved signage and wayfinding so that people, when they're walking from Fredericton, can see and say, oh, you know what, we have 5 kilometers, we're going to get to serve Douglas Hazen Park. Or vice versa, going to Fredericton, or this is where Dairy Delight is, or anything along those lines. We are currently, as you're aware, going through an active transportation and trail plan to improve our trails for user enjoyment and offer better AT routes from Oromocto through Lincoln to Fredericton. For those that would want to even take the trails and to come to work, they could do so, if we can increase and improve our trails. And, in the upcoming budget, you'll see for me, there'll be a request for some monies to create a waterfront plan to redo the Sir Douglas Hazen Park area, in order to really revitalize that area. And with the current agreement that we have with York County Cider as an anchor, that's what we're looking at, to create a welcoming, inviting space that everyone can access, regardless of their capabilities, and as well as their mode of transportation. So they want to come to the trail, the river, or the road, they can get to our waterfront. All of these projects are aimed to increase our tourism and our economic development in the area, and these barriers are often contradictory of what we're trying to accomplish as we move forward. What are our real risks? We recognize that council staff have received complaints who feel that motorized use is a safety concern. And we are not endorsing that we open the trails and allow non-motorized users onto the trail system. However, we feel there are other ways that we can reduce the use of the trail by the motorized users instead of barriers. And while we can see that we're not going to find a perfect option to keep people off the trails, on their ATVs or their motorcycles, we feel it's a small portion that are going around them anyways. They're not stopping them, we know that, but they do stop many that are trying to use them in a responsible way to walk or bike them, or be with their walkers or wheelchairs. There's also an increased liability associated with the delayed response first responders. In Oromocto, that is not as much a concern. Our fire departments can get around those 5 barriers, but if you're in the Lincoln area, there are fewer points of entry, so they would basically have to wait for someone from EPW or tie a chain to their fire truck and the barrier. However, if it was a different type of emergency vehicle, for example, an ambulance, would have to call EPW, get that removed before they could access the trail. So that risk may be greater than the risk posed by a collision between a pedestrian or cyclist and a motorized vehicle. So it's just trying to balance which risk is the greatest. When I speak to the province, for example, they have very few reports of physical injuries on the trails between motorized vehicles and walkers, because it's usually quite wide open and you can see some vehicle coming towards you. And as anybody who walks the trails know, 9 out of 10 of those users on the ATV trails where it is allowed are very polite. They slow down, they wave, you nod, and away you go. Unfortunately, we do have that small amount of users that no matter what we do, are not going to follow the rules. So there are some alternative options that staff can explore to the barriers. One, and I believe the CAO is looking into this, is a request for RCMP to have a bicycling patrol along the trail system. Another would be to have a request to off-road enforcement for increased presence and having checkpoints on areas that would not be very suspecting of our users or our irresponsible users. A better promotion of the RCMP online reporting tool and the non-emergency contact number to take a photo, send it in. So and I believe some counselors would know that it's usually a repeat number that you probably see along the trail that are the same ones that are down there. And crime prevention through environmental design. This is something that we'll be looking at the Anniversary Park as well. In hopes of eventually transitioning to non-human security is doing a design this way, which would be to maximize visibility, have consistent use of trails. More people on there, the less chance that we're going to have irresponsible use. Clear signage, well-maintained landscaping so you can see the trail, and we can look at lighting in our high-use areas and things along those designs. Again, part of that is to clear up the trail a little bit. So if there's any areas that a walker can't see, then just for a safety side of things, we can improve visibility along the trail. The request for council direction on this is that we recommend, that the existing concrete barriers be installed, as have been done in previous years. Or recommend not putting the barriers up and instead direct staff to consider reasonable, non-restrictive alternatives for reducing the motorized traffic on our non-designated trails. And at this time, I will welcome any questions.
Question, Councilor Carr?
Thank you for putting time into this direct. I'm just imagining how many complaints you fielded, and I know how many I have, especially in our area. It's nice to see too, because it's something we can visibly see the town taking part in our work, so that's appreciated though. I really like basically a combination of all of your slides as alternate options, all of them, right? Not a one, not a two. I think I've been saying from the beginning, enforcement is the biggest one. And that was brought up at the meeting again last week. In our work with David Coon, several issues came up with the trail, and it really all boils down to the RCMP present to answer questions. It's enforcement. We know it's enforcement. So they're actually sergeant. I might not be saying that right.
Yes,
Right. It's school district, Mr. School. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's sergeant. I apologize. Sorry.
yeah,
Said he's again trying to get my enforcement going. There were some barriers due to personnel shortages and things, but that would be great. So I like all of these. And when it comes to the request, I guess, when I think about the two options, I guess before I even get to that, data is missing. We don't really have, like you said at the start, we don't have that. So we don't know if what we're doing is working or not. We don't know if it's better because we don't have a baseline to start off with, which is, you can't go back in time and collect data that is done, right? Or the events that have happened. But it'd be nice to have some of that information. So maybe look at a way to start collecting this. Are our efforts making a difference? Because right now we're where we think they are, because we might get less or more calls. I don't know how to do that. That might be beyond where I've got to think wise, but that would be important because we can put barriers down all we want, or we can ask for enforcement to come all we want, but we have no way to know if it was improved or not. We really just have those phone calls that come in when somebody's having a really rough day and they're ticked off when they saw that wheeler on the trail. Whether it really impacted them or not, they're just mad because the rule says they're not supposed to be there. Could happen 7 other days, the same time every day. They don't call because they weren't home or they were just in a better mood. They weren't on the trail. So data collection, I think, would be huge. And when I look at the two options, I understand that I don't believe the barriers are doing a lot, and I have received calls both ways. I know there was some discussion over here when we were in your presentation. We said like often more calls. They want the barriers. But I've received calls from residents wanting the barriers gone because it does impede them getting their pull behind strollers through. Just to make it tight enough to get the dirt bikes off, but also means you can't get a pull behind, stroller behind a bike. Which I think the spacing was, but again, then the trucks put the ram bars on them and shove them together. So it's a whole mess. But we don't know if it's better or worse. So I would almost ask if there's a way to put the barriers until we have these other options lined up. Do we have these alternate options lined up currently, or are we hoping to?
We could quickly flip the switch to have those.
Have the discussions already happened, or?
Some of them have already, for example, here, the site clean and then we would just, at that point, lobby more to have the enforcement. On our end, for communication of the reporting tool, we would just amp up all of our communication and try to do these things. To try to collect that data is very difficult. Even I'll give you an example. I was down at the concert series last year and somebody from Lincoln came through and they had biked into the concert series and I knew them and she had said, oh, I'm late because I had to get off my bike 7 times to get my bike over to get here. And then while we were there, and I'm like, oh, well, and said, can you move them? And I said, no, I can't, it's a council directive. And then we saw this ATV go down and they're like, well, they're here. I'm like, that's because they went up the road and came back around again. And trying to explain it. So I said, you need to call your counselor. And they didn't want to do that. So what I find is the ones that are upset by it are the ones that are going to call, and the ones that are inconvenienced by it are like, oh, well, I'll just deal with it. Right. But it's not always the best course. And then I have had, that's the same individual wanting to go through with his bike carrier and why can't I move them apart? And I said, well, if I move them apart, then a motorcycle can zip through. Right. So again, and where it was a council decision, I prefer to speak to you.
And I do feel
Yeah, so
that we are hearing the loudest.
Yeah.
I've not actually heard of an injury, like you said, the data is not there to support that. It's a frustration because the
Yes.
school says not allowed and then, so,
Dog was run over 2 years ago, killed.
Right. happening down the road too, right? I'm not saying it's good, I'm not arguing with you, you're right, I'm just saying, like, but. Anyway, I like all of those initiatives, I think they're important, I think it's needed, I just don't know about taking barriers right off, but.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, worship. A few of the things I was going to say, Councillor Carr addressed about having data in order to make decisions. I also do like the point of unintended consequences. One of the things that I've heard just recently spoken about is the fact that they are driving more and more of those kinds of vehicles onto the street. And one of the things I wonder, instead of an A or a B, is there a C option? In the sense of, instead of cold turkey and not, is there, we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 dots, 7 red dots there. Instead of having 7 dots, so your friend doesn't have to get off their bike 7 times, maybe you go down to 3. And to see if, is that driving less vehicles onto the streets? And what is the feedback of that? I guess I would worry a little bit about removing them all. I don't use that trail system very often. But if I do, and an ATV is coming down the trail at me, I think I'm still nimble enough that I can hit the woods.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if everybody could.
But I understand that,
And
and again.
I'm just asking, is there the option, or is it just a point one?
For the most part, I would think most users could get off the road, get out of the trail, just, and that's what I said, based on the information I get from the province as well. My reluctance to only having a few on there is, where do we put them? And then, does that create a new argument? We have one that maybe, I think most are residing in the same ward anyways, but then if we don't have them in Lincoln, and then we have them in Oromocto, that creates a new discussion point, right? So that's where I would be hesitant on that, but again, it's council's decision on that, right?
Sorry, just as follow, I think, I don't know if I'm understanding your answer, just simply because, unless I'm wrong, those 7 locations is where they have been before.
Correct.
And have been for a few years.
Yes and no. So the ones in Oromocto were there, the ones in Lincoln were not. They were there part-time of the year. Oromoctos are normally always up, except for snow plowing, right?
Okay.
So that's where and again, that was before my time, and I'm still kind of trying to sort this part of itself, right?
So the concern about removing 1 or 2 of them is that other people will want them?
No. What ones do we remove? So if I just take out a few and then it's in their backyard, but not this week. So where do we determine which are the fair ones to remove?
Understood. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to, like I always do, try to find the
middle
ground of cold turkey versus keep them all there to address some of those concerns.
Right.
And being that this trail is not in my ward or immediately behind my residents' homes, I don't get those calls. My colleagues over here would.
Right.
So I don't know if people would be possessive about their barrier, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If we feel as though that there's a medium of maybe 4 of the 7 would be, let's leave them and do an incremental kind of back off and see if there's any positive or negative from it. Or if you just want to go cold turkey or not, that's fine too. I guess I'm just trying to find that, is there a C option or is there a thing or B? Thank you.
And your worship, I will say there's always a C option.
Yeah.
Right? It's the will of council. So there's always a C option. So yeah, I mean, if it's not 7 and it's 3, or if it's 0 or 1 or 9, look, that's why we're having the discussion.
That's what done.
Thank you, worship. So Jackie, I can understand where you're coming from as far as the tourism sector and everything. I completely support that, especially down in around the Hazen Center area. But I also am torn because I hear the biker and that, I do see what you have up there. My first question is, are those large rocks still down by the Public Works Department? There are two big rocks that you could get through on a bike and a carriage and a twin carriage. Because I sat on those rocks when we had this discussion many years ago and watched them go through and talk to them. So the bikers could get through on those big rocks. Did that get turned into a gate?
So I'm sorry, which.
Down by the old Public Works entrance.
Yeah,
On the
so there are
left-hand side.
gates down there's on each side.
On each side, there is down gates.
Right, yeah, and so that they were there, but that also allows access for motorcycle. So I think that's why they ended up. putting
They put a
gates
gate there instead of those rocks. Okay.
Yeah.
Because any of these solutions aren't, I don't know how we're going to solve, and I don't think we will ever solve those little darlings getting on those trails and just zooming down, because my other comment, as soon as it was said, was we should not have to jump off the trail to accommodate the oncoming vehicle. So what do we put in place to stop it? Because if we open that willy-nilly, I only have a month to listen to the phones ringing. And I know the ones right now who will call. And I think Cindy knows the ones who will call as soon as that's opened up and they can go up wherever they want. They're not supposed to, they're still gonna do it. That's reality. And I don't know how we as a council are ever going to fix that. I think something has to be done, but I don't know about opening that all the way through.
I think the ones that are doing it now are
Going to continue to.
gonna continue to do it. I don't know how many responsible ATVers would go down the trail to gates open. But, the ones that are doing it are irresponsible ones regardless. The ATV club doesn't go down that. They know better. It's the ones that aren't part of the clubs. They're going down there regardless. So I look at it that stopping the ones that are, we're trying to stop. And now we're stopping people that are using it responsibly. And that's why I said, we're not opening this, we're not opening this up for ATV use. That's not the point, but we're opening it up for pedestrians or cyclists to use.
But the pedestrians and the cyclists, not the gates, unless the gates are open at a certain time and close at a certain time. If that's the case, then they are able to get through without the jerseys or whatever you call them. Those big ones, I can see that.
Right, but so we took out the jersey barriers, just put the regular gates up.
Yeah.
They are easily ripped open. They just they put a chain on it and just yank it up.
Let's make sure we premise this by gates. There are no gates left. By gates, we're talking about concrete jersey barriers that look like you're entering Beirut.
Okay.
They're not inviting, they're ugly.
There's two gates in Lincoln
you know,
that still exist. That's why
But the gates, we don't have any gates left. The province won't help with gates because they too have abandoned gates because they just get torn out or ripped apart. I will say, and again, we'll go with the council's will, but there's a far greater risk of alienating, folks who want to come to Oromocto and recreate in Oromocto than there is the few idiots, and I'll call them idiots, and they can listen to me on tape, but that's what we're dealing with here. And these barriers aren't stopping them. They're just not. So we do end up with unintended consequences. And I'll say, while I can't quantify it, and it's not a lot, but I get far more complaints about the barriers than I do about them being there. So far more people who are saying, gosh, I'm trying to bring my kids down to Oromocto and I don't know if I should go past these things. Then I got to get everybody off their bikes and back on their bikes. And do you need those things? That's what I get more than, gosh, can you put more up? But again, we're here and we're having this discussion because we certainly don't want to do anything against the will of council, but we're trying to make sure council has a full appreciation of both sides of the issue.
Councilor Kirkbride.
Thank you, worship. And I'm the exact opposite of being on council for 12 years. I have never had one complaint about the gates. In regards to them being there, I've never had. 12 years. My complaints have been always about the machines. And one of my biggest complainers is my very next door neighbor who has 2 small children and 2 dogs, and there is their fence. 10 feet or 15 feet, the trail and the rest of their backyard. And they are constantly crossing. And the grandfather swooped up last year. Because the kid was driving too fast, swooped up the grandchild. Until I know. RCMP is gonna be on that trail, and our road enforcement's gonna be on that trail. I will not be voting to remove those barricades. I don't care if you think it's a route, where do you think it is? I will not be voting in favor of that until we know that this is gonna happen. And until we know some of these idiots are taken care of. As far as this, that, and the other, but then again, we had a chance to do something last year where the young man was going down Wass's Road to wheelies in front of the entire high school, and our RCB officer on staff didn't even bother to give him a ticket. Or confiscate the guy's bicycle or motorcycle. So I don't have a lot of faith right now in this until I see it happening. I do like the idea. If that can happen, absolutely. And it would only take some, till word get out, right? And it's the same idea like security at our park, Anniversary Park. That has helped a great deal, right? Before I came here at 4:30 today, young man on a 4-wheeler, I couldn't get my phone out in time. On a wheelie, no helmet on, going right down the middle of my street. My next door neighbor's 1-year-old walking in the driveway. Right? It's a problem. It's a huge problem in our community. Some worse than others. And I get that, but until I know that this stuff is, I can't vote in favor of taking them all down. I just can't until I know some of this stuff is gonna happen first. Because if my next door neighbor's child got hit or the dog got hit walking 20 feet from one side just because they have to cross the trail into the backyard, I would be able with myself. I just wouldn't. I do like the idea of, what was it, and I don't even think I knew about this. Reporting it online. I do love that idea, but I don't even think I knew about that. Is that new?
He's been in them for a while.
Yeah, probably get that out stuff like on our website.
It's been on the website and then the guide and that.
Okay.
But we can certainly do it again and.
Yeah.
do it
You
again.
are good. I actually didn't, I hate to admit that I didn't know that one. I wrote some notes, some story. But again, the biggest problem is, it isn't every, like, even my next door neighbor who has the complaints, those kids. If they're being responsible, being illegal going down there and they're going slow and they slow down, no one's gonna say anything to those kids. It's that few ones that are gonna cause them being too fast. And that worries me, But I mean, if we can get that increased presence, but I mean, I've been asking for that increased presence for how many years? And at least 5, if not more, we've been asking for more priority. And it hasn't happened. I know they're busy, I know there's not enough of them either, but until that's my opinion.
Councilman Victor?
Thank you, worship. This is a tough discussion to have, because I mean. I don't get a lot of complaints about the trail. Brian seems to be our trail specialist and But I can say, and after our public meeting last week, most of the concerns were not about motorized vehicles, it was about the speed of bikers coming up behind people. And as the one resident to me, was these guys that gotta get their 600 Ks in every night with the, with the helmets, the uniforms and things, and they're going 100 miles an hour. They don't use the bells. There's more close calls with those guys than she had with motorized vehicles, but the other thing I want to say is that, when we talk about not having motorized vehicles, I mean, Fredericton allows e-bikes, Fredericton allows motorized scooters. I don't know what our rules are for those on the trail, but I would suspect they're on the trail. Definitely e-bikes are on the trail, I know that for a fact. So we have to have a discussion about, are those gonna be allowed on the trail? there's another whole set of constituents we haven't talked about. And I've had as many people that don't have ATVs and don't have snowmobiles that approach it. Why can't those people use the trail? They pay taxes in Oromocto. They have access to things. So there's a whole other side of people we haven't even talked to yet about use of the trails. Now, I understand there are rules around passive trails and motorized vehicles and things and how the land is deeded and whatnot. But there's a whole other constituency we haven't even talked about. And with regards to the gates and the barriers, I guess we could probably get some information from ambulance New Brunswick, how many times ambulances have to go on the trail. Because I would hate to think that we know that the barriers aren't working, then they go around. So I would hate to think that we keep the barriers up and someone couldn't get the access they needed to an ambulance or their first responder because a barrier was in the way and that delayed a response and someone was harmed by that lack of a response. Because if, in my mind, if the barriers aren't working, my first thing will then take them out. Because there's an expense to having them there, there's an expense to repairing them. But you can't have it willy-nilly because people will go crazy down these trails. So it's a hard decision to make. But I still don't think we've talked to everybody we need to talk to about use of the trails, because like I said, I've had surprisingly as many people say, what about the ATVs and the motorized bikes and things, because those people pay taxes too, so, and I was shocked that I thought everyone would be in the same mind, keep these things off the trails.
But aren't there trails for some of them already?
Oh, yeah, well,
Their own trails?
I don't have one, so I don't know whether, but there are trails,
They
yeah.
have their own trails.
So there's also any dirt road's a trail. I mean,
Well,
for some of these guys too, right, so.
So I think council would have received invite on the 21st for discussion with our consultants for the active transportation and trail plan. Which will give an opportunity to discuss those things. I would say that we're probably gonna get some comments similar to what you heard from your area. It's stuff that I hear. And I hear it from town residents as well that call and say, why can't I take my ATV from Oromocto West and drive it up Carpenter to hook onto the sanctioned trails? Or when I lived on that street, there was a regular snowmobiler that would go by and do the same thing. So there are others that are of that mindset. And I've got emails from those representatives to meet, and I've indicated that we would do so after we do our assessment of the survey as well, because they would like to have better access. And again, I say that that's not my decision, it'd be council's decision. In other communities, I will say too, when we talk about areas of Brunswick, when I spoke to the province and a couple other places, they have removed the barriers because of requests from their fire departments and through ambulance in Brunswick because of the safety. They don't feel that risk is there. And so same thing, if there's a fire anywhere along the trail in Lincoln, they're gonna be waiting to delay that response until they can remove those barriers to get down there. Yeah.
Because certainly it's a hot ticket item, look at the base, man, the base
there-
roads and trails. All over the place. The news.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Council Card? Did you?
Yeah, sorry, sorry, thank you, Rick. I would assume, as a student many moons ago, I worked for the city of Fredericton, and this almost exact same issue at that time was happening in the Marysville area. Because it's very, and I'm thinking of my ward, not downtown or Rockville, but downtown, yeah, like that. But very similar, so there's, every community who has these trails has any community that had a railway going through it has this exact same experience. It's not new, so they would be a great resource, being regionally very similar to us. The trail goes through their communities, and I'm assuming you have spoken to them.
Yes, so.
And I'm sure they have a model that they use, and they probably had similar results where there's still the odd few bad apples.
Yeah, so I did speak to the city because as I mentioned, we were looking at this partnership with them. They only have one barrier up. They've removed all the others for many of the reasons that we spoke to. And that's their stance, so they don't see that they're gonna be putting any barriers up. And so that you're exactly right, they have certain areas that have that issue. And they've kind of waded through the pros and cons of that. I will go back to another point, though. We were talking about reporting. So we are looking at a signage program to marry up with the Fredericton, so we have a clear one. And that's something to potentially put the QR code on for reporting right on the side, right? And say, hey, you're walking down here and a vehicle just went by, let that report it, right? Most people have that on their phones nowadays, and that's even an area where we could put signs out reminding people on bicycles. I mean, yeah, you see that on the billboard blocking routes, they have signs saying vehicles shouldn't go this fast. And that is, I know, the city of Brendan does allow that. It's something that will be probably brought up to council. We haven't had I don't wanna say we haven't looked at those issues yet about, motorized e-bikes or e-scooters that Fredericton does. I think partly because they're paved and we're not, which makes a little bit of a difference, but we do have it on the streets of Oromocto. So I've been walking and somebody's doing a spot meeting on their scooter, whatever, coming on, and so it's gonna be the point where how do we allow a bicycle that can go, an e-bike that can go 40 kilometers an hour down our trails, but we're not letting somebody responsibly use their, we're gonna have all these things, it's complex, right? And it's not an easy solution, and as you spoke about your neighbor and going down the road, they're on the road, because we have barricades up on the trail. So do we keep them all on trail, do we have to spread? Because what I write down is they go around it, back on the trail and back around again, right? And so I don't think it's, there's not an easy solution, and that's why I brought it to you, so you can make it easy. Thanks.
Oh, yes, Councilor Murdoch.
Yeah, my first instinct is to take them down to the obvious, just for the reasons you said. Everyone here would love to see people that be able to use the trails properly, would come and go and not have the barriers. I'd hate to look at them, the concept of them, and to talk about that person had to get off the bike 7 times to get green. Like it's not the way to go, and I totally see why a lot of people go in. But there is obviously some worrisome about the recommendations that are in place in lieu of. And I guess somewhere along the line, it almost has to be, for lack of a better word, true and tried. Like, the sign's gonna be up there and you scan them and they're there first. And the presence of talking to the RCMP, it's because you can't, as Councilor Kirkbride said, can't take that away. And because yes, there is only a few. And there's only probably a few that are gonna get around them no matter what, and it doesn't matter what we do. And there's some common sense or some sensibility of just getting rid of it because you can't stop them anyway. The fear is that, then the ones that weren't going around and stuff may decide that they can now. And that's where you're adding to the problem. But I think my first instinct reading this was, yes, I'd love to see them gone. I see this recommendations, I see a lot of fuss in them, but I just sort of, I wish we had something a little more solid. Like, if we were told that presence on the trails were going to be, they're on the trail, well, Anniversary Park. And you brought that up, we put people there, we had presence, it was state, it took a while for the stats to come out, took a while for things to come around. I guess my fear is maybe the happy medium is the way to go, is the cold turkey things worries me because of the severity of some of the situations can be there. But if I had to pick, I would like to see them gone. I'd like to see them gone for all the reasons you talked today, but I also just feel that we just have to have something in these alternatives, something more solid or something that is concrete. And a combination of all of them to make that for the people that, are taking advantage of. Because I do believe our trails, and I have heard people complain about barriers. I have heard that. I haven't heard so much the barrier, that they want them, because I get to hear it from you guys, like Councilor Kirkbride, that has presence, that area in his own way he sees it. I don't. I do have complaints from some people down on Finnemore, where they constantly go down Finnemore, and I think you guys have got quite a few phone calls from Finnemore, how they drive down Finnemore to get to the trail. And I do think there's some need to be done for maybe hypothetically more trails for the users of these things. Our world has changed. It used to be if you wanted a 4-wheeler or things like that, you had to live out of the town. Well, the point is, e-bikes and scooters have all changed what we do in our municipalities, that those things are becoming part of the inside as opposed to just outside, and you could go around on the dirt road that you wanted to. I think maybe the trick here is more design trails for those people more connecting so they don't feel like they have to go through a trail. Are we gonna fix the idiots? No. But I don't like the idea that people that are not doing anything wrong have to get off their bike 7 times to get to someplace. That part, actually, that they're the people that are not doing this, and the amount of people that might not do that trail or come to the community or come to events because of is disturbing as well. We know whose fault it is, but it's still something I wish we did.
And that's actually a group that came through, is a regular cycling group that are trying to create tours, to bring, basically an economic span in. And he said, can you build those for me and I can get a group in almost every week or two? And I said, no, I can't, right? So he's found alternate routes. right?
Yeah.
But, cause it's a good one for them to come down, they go around Burton Bridge and away they go. right?
Yeah,
So
and
that's-
I love that idea, but
So-
unfortunately, we all have to live here together, and that's not all. that
There's also an argument in some communities, so if you go into different provinces, it's all, a lot of them are shared trails. And so with motorized and non-motorized, with the idea that if you actually have your federations on there, they help police the ones that are.
Yeah, see, like that, I love that.
But then it becomes, that's a
That's an
much bigger
economical project, and
but the
cost.
that, right, so that we have your, and they all, they all cost share on the repairs and trails as well, right?
Well, that I'm saying, maybe, obviously, we can't fix it overnight, but some of this kind of foundation may be started even in the interim, because it's not gonna go away, and we can't go back for what, we have to find a grade, and maybe that's the grade.
Councilor Dow?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm listening to everything that's being said. Just one thing I wrote down right now. I'm not so much against taking the barriers off because of those people who try to get from the trail from Finnemore onto the trail. Those are not the ones I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the misusers that have been for 14 years down on the trail behind them all the way straight down through to the
That's
to
our
the
fault.
bridge.
Yeah.
That's the one. I know we're not gonna solve it, but I really don't wanna give them willy-nilly free ride. Cause you know that those little darlings, and you're talking about the ambulance getting on because of an accident, well, only it's gonna take one accident. And we're gonna regret maybe that full decision. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, so we have to come to a compromise, and I don't think taking all of them off is the way to go, so I'd like to see something other than, and I'm gonna be selfish, especially on my end. But it does still go down towards Jeff Santa's. If they can get down that far, they will.
Yeah.
And then get on Lansdowne and get up the lane.
Well, it's quite obvious there's no win-win situation. If they win, lose one either way. And you can't fix stupid, so I don't know, council, you have A, B, or C?
I like a C or D, maybe, like I said, there's always a C or D, only because A and B are just a little too extreme right now for us to be comfortable.
I feel like I like A, I just don't believe in A yet. I believe in it. I don't know
We need
that,
to see it.
like Councilor Bright said, I don't know that all those ducks are in order yet. I don't feel confident that all of that will happen yet, but that is an end goal, I think that is the right solution in the end is A. Or sorry, B, I yeah, sorry. My letters mixed up on something. Getting rid of would be the end goal.
Deputy
I
Mayor?
think we're gonna, I know that there was a, survey put out just recently to ask for community feedback on active transportation. We also have a consultation session Monday. I'm wondering if we could table this discussion until after the survey results come back and after the consultation session. And then we come back with a more, not a more thorough, but with a perhaps adapted recommendation based on community feedback and the consultation process.
Certainly. The reason why we did it now is because the deadline to put them back up after the snowmobile agreement is April 15th. So that's why, but we certainly didn't put them up, have discussion, and council at that time wants to take down a few, then we can. We were just trying to get ahead of that decision there. Also, it's just like I said, it's kind of reared its head more so in the last year or so, so I put it on the radar to, I think, just kind of update council on how things changed since the original decision to put those up has definitely changed in the community. I know I actually spoke to a few people that were house hunting, and were looking, they said, oh, I'm gonna buy down on the trail,
Lansing?
Lansdowne, that they can hop on the trail. I'm like, no, you really can't, right? And try to explain that, but they thought, oh, on the trail, I can access it and keep going, so. You're definitely right that there's some that want it and some that don't, and there is, I will say, we're, as Councilor Carr mentioned, I've been to 3 trail summits now and many meetings on this, it's not unique to Oromocto. And every community kind of tackles it differently, but, we're seeing that change again, that they're trying to do more cooperative groups to see if they can have more eyes on the trail to put at least those darlings that you refer to them.
And I think, your worship, if I hear correctly, at least if we have our session next week, it'll also allow staff to consider a plan C perhaps. That's what I'm hearing, some, or perhaps the consensus is see if there's a plan C, which is somewhere between A and B. And so we can do that as well, and then bring something back in June.
Perfect. I think that's the best option. Council, agree?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Your Worship.
thank you, Jackie. We'll move to 5B, the fire station number 2 renovations. In Dallas, you have that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Your Worship, this request for a decision seeking approval of council for the procurement of professional services of Inter Architects and CBCL in a joint project to evaluate the feasibility of potential options to expand Fire Station 2 for a cost of $40,000 through $40,370 plus HST. Some background on this, I'm sure council is familiar with the need to replace and increase the size of Fire Station 1 on Mirror Road. We've been having conversations internally in terms of our capital planning about how do we proceed to do this stuff and when at different stages. In some parts of those discussions, there was talks about what happens to the space for the leadership of OFD. Where do we put them? What are the options? And at some point it was brought up that, there might need to be growth and expansion in the volunteer station 2. And there was thought that the annex of Fire Station 2 had been designed with the capacity to potentially take a second level, which could add that additional office space for the leadership of OFD. And while Fire Station 1's under construction, which would then be the additional space that would be used for the volunteer force when it's done being used. That had been kind of an anecdotal thing, because it was more of like a word of mouth from the previous CAO with the fire chief that the annex could take on that second level. And we needed to get to a point where we went beyond just we think it can to we have some expertise and some structural analysis from the engineers to say that it can or it can't. And if it can't, is there an option to expand Fire Station 2 footprint instead of going outward, and still allow the town hall and the parking lot to function? The reason we're looking at evaluating this is because we think if we have to do this, then having that space to load the people that while waiting while under Fire Station 1 under construction is just gonna be more cost effective for people. So that's kind of what we're looking at, but we need to get beyond the internal staff level of our own pencils and start getting some knowledge if this is actually feasible. And then before we go and invest major money. Now, $40,000 is a chunk change, obviously. But we went out to for about 6 firms that we put out to as and invited to bid. We had 4 responses to our request for proposals. We had a review committee truck that included leadership of the planning department, the fire department, engineering, public works, clerk's office, CAO, and building maintenance, just to talk about it. And we evaluated that we thought the submission from Acre Architects and CBCL was the winning bid. It was the most cost-effective bid, and they have good expertise on this project. So in accordance with the town procurement policy, the staff followed that and got the bids. And now we're recommending, that the council give, consent to approve the procurement of the services of, Aiken Architects and CBCL on a joint project to, evaluate the expansion of fire station options. If there's any questions?
Questions? Councilman Victor?
Thank you, worship. I got a couple of questions here, guys. This is the feasibility study. So if it comes back with, yes, you can do it, then we're talking expending another $1 million to put a floor on the building? I mean, ballpark, so we're talking $200,000, we're talking $1 million,
That's what the feasibility would give us a class D estimate, so we know what the costs were.
but you must have ballpark in your head, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's talking about the fake.
You know, we're easily in $1 million
Okay,
range for
good.
sure, yeah.
My issue is, I don't recall us ever definitively deciding where Station One was gonna be. I know we had a fire study done, and we talked around it, but I don't think, because I remember having some discussion at the time, or is that the right place to have it? Given the fact that 50% of our population is now on the outer extremes of that response radius, because they weren't there in 56 when the station was built. So I don't know, we've had that final decision on where the station is gonna be, number one. So if we don't know where the new station one's gonna reside, how can we, in good faith, make a decision to expand station two? Because we don't know where station one's gonna be. The other thing that I have a concern about, or an issue about, is we are looking at, hopefully, a greater expansion of town population in the next 10 years. We don't know where all those people are gonna end up, where the houses are gonna be, where the, you know, the apartments are gonna be, but I do know for a fact that with Park Place, we're adding a whole bunch of residents and people down there. We've had the 2 new apartment buildings on Black Watch since we've had this discussion, again in Oromocto West. We now got the 27 unit subdivision being built in Lincoln, or being applied for in Lincoln. That's another 100 people or whatever. Again, all outside that original radius of station was built here, you wanna build it based on a 10-minute response. So now we're gonna have it more than half the population potentially outside on the extremes of that radius. And with the PMQs that are gonna be built, or whatever they're gonna call them, where they're gonna be built. Are they gonna be built inside the gate? Is the base fire department gonna be responsible as first responder for those? So where are those gonna be? I mean, those are all things I would like to know before we start expanding a volunteer fire station, when we don't really know 100% yet where we're gonna build the first fire station. And with regards to I know it's not the only reason, but, you know, expansion could provide a space to house the leadership of OFD. I know guys that give you a couple construction trailers and office trailers that can do that on a temporary basis, rather than spend $1 million to expand a building. Now, I know that's not why you're doing it, but to me, that's not a very valid reason to expand a building, because temporary space while you're building a new building is much more cheaply found somewhere. Anyway, that's the 2 cents.
I can answer both those questions probably. One is, I mean, we do have quite a bit of data to support that the only real logical place for a station is where the current station is. It's based on response times and types of uses. So what anchors us particularly to that location is the industrial park. And so there's certain response times that we need to meet that industrial park piece. As soon as you start to pull further away from that area, you now run a risk of having to have another station nearby. Residential in particular in Lincoln, especially when it's spaced out on 1-acre lots. The range for response time to that in relation to industrial parks is far more lenient. So our range to get there is not as significant. So there's more time to respond. And the basic rationale there is, yes, I know that poor person's house on that 1-acre lot may be destroyed, but it'll be the only one. Versus when the Sobeys warehouse starts to go up, there's gonna be a whole lot of chaos adjacent to and all over the place. So that's part of it. We do have some studies to support that. Because we have tried to see whether we can pull it in different directions that would be viable, right? Because again, it's that we don't have a lot of land that's raw or that's available to us. The other piece is, and the growth in terms of the RHUs will all happen in the current RHU patch. Those brown spaces that they tore down will get refilled. And even the ones that are there now will turn into multi-unit buildings instead of singles. So density in that area is going to go up. And therefore, that's another reason to keep it close. I'd say the reason for this one isn't so much to relocate management, but we are going to grow and we do need 2 stations. And we don't need 2 career stations, but we do need to expand this station at some point to suit the expanding needs, which you're right, is all on the west side. That's important to the growth on the west side from a response time as well. So I don't want this to sound like this is being done to accommodate temporarily management.
No, it's just part of it.
Yeah, sure, that's a part which could be helpful, but it's really there has to be some expansion of that station. And we want to make sure that it's actually viable, because that's the one I'm unsure about. What I am sure about is the viability location of Station 1. What I'm unsure about is whether or not we can add another story to this building that somebody said 27 years ago you could. And whether it's even viable for the footprint of this site. So that's why we wanted to explore that, because we're either gonna check that box or we're gonna move on. And find, perhaps an alternate location to expand a second station, which definitely needs to be on this side of the highway due to our growth projections. So it's a matter of can we expand on the one that's here now, or will we need to find an alternate location for that one as well?
Yeah, my only concern about the location is that in 1956, Bullseye's here, there's your spot for it. I mean, since then, 50% of our population is on the far reaches of that. So I find it very hard to believe, with the amount of issues in the industrial part, that there wouldn't be a rationale for moving Station 1 a couple kilometers closer to that 50% of the population that is now outside that bullseye. To me, common sense says, if half your population wasn't there when you drew the bullseye, the bullseye has to have moved somewhere closer to Oromocto West. I don't know how far that is, but it just seems to me that it makes sense that if you've got 50% of it, I'm not worried about my house in Lincoln. I know you're coming to save the basement. That's not a problem. I live on the far extreme. I'm not in that 10-minute golden window of 10 firefighters on scene in 10 minutes. I'm about 12 or 14 minutes, so I'm outside that window. But it seems to me that if you got 50% of your population now outside where the bullseye was, it only makes common sense that bullseye has to move this way some amount of space.
But there was a study done, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. I'm
It
waiting
was
my
just
turn.
a couple of.
And I would agree with you, it's just in that tolerance. We don't own anything, and so we either have to expropriate.
Plus, it puts you closer to the highway, which I hear is a much bigger concern. They have many more calls on the highway now with accidents and medical calls and things.
Makes sense.
Almost-
It's just, there's no availability of easily developable land on a footprint that we would need.
We know whether the old TIC is.
No, we couldn't, no, the viability of access there.
Again, I'm not the next one, I don't know.
Yeah, oh, look, we've beat this one around, trust me, internally quite a bit, because I, like you, wanna find that sweet spot, but part of it is dealing with what's already in existence and the availability of land. And so a lot of the land you see that isn't built on is E and D. They're currently definitely not interested in wanting to give up any land when it comes to, that. So, the closer we try to edge towards, say, the Lincoln area, we start to assume like there's a golf course. It could go there and still suit, but I'm gonna bet nobody wants to give up the golf course for a fire station. Or I go across the road and I'm dealing with this, housing. So that's the hard part there, is just finding, to your point, it's not that it couldn't come that way a little bit. It's just finding an opportunity to be able to place it. So
Was this
And I will say too, part of the reason we wanted to do this now is it's budgeted for is under kind of our capital planning that we had set aside from the funds to kind of do this kind of analysis. But the reason we want to do it now is because if it's not viable, then the idea of having the space in the meantime of doing fire station one, that whole thing becomes moot.
right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, the idea is if we built a new fire station one and had temporary spots, but we could have just done this option, which would have addressed the temporary spots and provided the extra space for two. It could be a win-win, and it's just a matter of how much it's gonna cost for us to be able to determine if that's feasible. It doesn't necessarily bump it up, make it a higher priority, or impact where fire station one goes.
No.
But in terms of fire station two, when we do look at, okay, so at some point, fire station one is probably gonna come down. If it gets rebuilt in its current site, and if that happens, then we'd be trying to find another place for people, whereas this would allow us to, I guess, reuse that space for temporary housing and as well as add some functional space here. But right now, what we're looking for is the funding to get the analysis, let us know if it's viable, as opposed to necessarily scheduling it as a capital project or deciding what to do with fire station one.
Councilor Donna?
Thank you, Worship. Now I'll speak. I had a lengthy conversation with Dallas. I'll tell you, I read that and I immediately called him. And I thought, what is going on? Anyway, I gave him my views. He did express exactly what he said tonight. I'm sitting here smiling because I know those answers. I also told him, if this is just a place to put Jody, I said, in a temporary position, I said, oh no, I said, Jody was over in the admin bill at one time and decided that they needed to be in with in station one. So we got that straightened out. And then he explained just what he's explained here, and the more I calmed down about it, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Because if, like Dal says, if it's not feasible for our growth down the road to do when we have to expand station two, then it doesn't make sense to move forward. I flippantly said, if we've got to do that, we might as, talking about station one, I said, we might as well just go bite the bullet, get more money and build station one and get that done with, because that's the immediate one, as far as I'm concerned, when this growth happens, as Gary has said, with the population, and that's not that far down the road when we're looking at it. So I appreciate you being very thorough on that with my silly questions, but I have to get it organized in my mind when it comes to all of this building, because we are going to get questions on it. No, but it made sense in the end to spend the $40, which is in your budget. Oh, did I say $40? $40,000.
would have said yes.
To get it done now and know that it's something that's either going to hold the weight or it's not going to hurt. So.
Okay, Councilor
I
Kirkpatrick?
have a quick question. And I know there's feelings that's not right, but. If there's, we're talking about station one, station two, and station two, if there's a call on fire in Oromocto West, they're not the first ones there, station one goes first, right? So may I ask the question, when we're gonna rebuild new station one up in the area, because that area is gonna be wide open. Because of the new facility that's been built, why are we not putting station one and station two in the same facility? And decommissioning this one, and it better not be because they don't get along. That just makes sense to me.
No, I
Like,
mean,
I don't understand.
so some of it is because you will need another station, whether it's man or so, for example, if anybody has listened to the news lately, Fredericton just approved another fire station. Why? Because they're growing out towards Hanwell and they're now required based on those times to have now another station built in that vicinity because it's growing beyond.
But
So
that station's not gonna be manned by volunteers.
no, but here's the caveat is that you're required to have the station. What you're not required is to have it be manned by a professional staff or volunteer staff. So,
For insurance for,
right. So that's where
you know, they're not allowed to go call unless station one. can't
they,
go.
so, you know, that's helping us in terms of it helps our operating budget, obviously with a composite force versus having two fully paid for a year. I mean, look, the union would love to have both those be fully paid stations, and maybe someday in our growth evolution they will.
That's what they're saying.
But here, what we're not saying tonight is this study does not place Station 2 ahead of Station 1 in terms of our capital plan.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
All it's doing is trying to determine, is this site viable in the future or not? I'll tell you, our radar and our 5-year plan, and you've all seen it, has Station 1 on there, and that will still be the, more priority. As most people know, it's far lived its lifespan. However, we do want to see whether or not there's any viability in this particular location being expanded down the road. Whether we do it today or whether we do it 3-5 years from now, we're going to have to do it.
What? Is there any funding that we can get for this? Consultation for that?
On
You know,
this
seems like
particular
a-
one, we have budgeted for this. It's been in our budget for a couple of years now. We are looking for different sources of funding through our funding coordinator for this stuff. Right now, we haven't found one that fits this particular piece, but at the same time, we're still out there trying to find funding, for example, when it comes to construction of Station 1. That one is where I want to find funding. I know 40,000, I totally agree, it's not insignificant, but I'd rather take 12 million for the construction of Station 1 than the funding of 40,000 for this study.
That's correct, right?
That was actually the question I was gonna ask, is usually when we get something that says what account it's coming out of, that's not.
So this,
CEO's project management budget.
yeah, so this is coming out of my project management account. If you recall, I kind of took that autonomy away from different departments in terms of managing capital. So I did agree to put a piece in there for this purpose, and so I have it there dedicated for this, but it's coming out of my account.
Well, my concern is like Lincoln now, if you go behind the Dairy Light and goes all the way up to the highway, that's a long way away from the highway. So we should be looking at something closer. To me,
I mean, down the road, there's certainly, as we grow, there could be a requirement to place another station in the Lincoln area. I mean, there isn't yet. It's not dense enough there yet.
I'm not trying to get a station in Lincoln.
But
I'm just trying to.
No, but I am.
But those are certainly things that as we grow, I mean, and you'll see it, it's similar to what's been going on in Fredericton with with the, them having to build a new station in the Bishop Drive area, someday down the road, I could foresee a time when we may very well have to put one out in that ward area as it grows, expands and densifies, but right now it isn't, but it's certainly something that through our planning, our municipal plans and our capital plans is something that will remain on our radar as we grow.
Okay, council, it's time to vote. How many yays? I guess yay one. You were saying that.
Fires, they don't put out, right?
Good answer.
Upwards, I'm gonna help milk.
Yeah. All right, we'll move down to 5C, the capital paving tender with David Goodfellow.
And I know your worship, but I'm cognizant of the time, and we have had our auditors here for almost an hour waiting out there. I don't know if you want to just try to plug through the rest of us, depending on timing for everyone, but
I'm good.
okay.
It's not gonna take that long.
Plug through it, Dave.
Thank you, your worship. This request for decision regarding the asphalt resurfacing and concrete curbing tender for the 2026 season. Town of Oromocto posted tender for the asphalt resurfacing and concrete curbing of town streets by the Brunswick Opportunities Network on March 31st, with a closing date of April 9th. Work is to include but not limited to asphalt upgrades, curb replacement, sidewalk installations, and corresponding immediate landscape. Work sites identified in the budget were for Wasatch Road, 2, set by the industrial park, Doyle Drive, Grizzly Street, and a sidewalk along Savant. That's the other side along for the care facility. At the time of tender closing, the town received 5 competing tender submissions. As part of the 2026 capital budget, applications were assigned to the Wasatch Road, the Drive and Grizzly Street. The amounts that occurred there. Savannah Street project is a separate expenditure to upgrade that sidewalk. The total estimate for this work is valued at $1,140,235, excluding taxes. As such, with the tender closing, the lowest quote received was Focus Paving Limited for $926,713.55 HSD plus HSD, working out to $1,065,720,000.35. Department of Engineering and Public Works is recommending the town council approve the tender quotes submitted from Focus Paving to be accepted. Any question?
That's warm and fuzzy, council. Oh, Council Dow.
Thank you. Your worship, I probably know the answer, but I want to just clarify. Doyle Street is having more, because of the cost, more work done to it. So the Route 102 is mostly paving, probably not pipes and all that stuff.
That's right, just.
That's what I thought.
And the Route 102 is also through the provincial municipal highway partnership program. So there's a reduced cost to us as the broader says. Case portion
And Grizzly, it's not as much work being done as, so the biggest one is Doyle.
is doing
Perfect.
curbing side.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. That's warm and fuzzy. Thank you, Dave.
I'm gonna talk down.
We'll move down to 5D, the 19th March 2026 regular session minutes are before you. Any errors or omissions, please let Cynthia know as soon as possible. And now I'll move down to get a mover for an adjournment. Councillor Dawes, seconded. Councillor Wayland. Questions? All in favor? Contrary? Motion carried.